I wasn't asleep when the phone rang. I haven't truly slept in 15 years, not since that night. Not since the police officer stood at my door, their hats in their hands, their eyes unable to meet mine. Not since they'd told me the words that ripped my soul from my body. Your son, there was an accident. He didn't make it. Danny was 17 years old, my only child, my entire world. So when my phone lit up at 3:07 a.m. on the anniversary of his death, I was sitting in my usual spot, the rocking chair by the window, staring at the oak tree in the backyard where his tire swing still hung. I kept it there. I couldn't take it down. Taking it down would mean accepting he was never coming back. I glanced at the phone, expecting spam or a wrong number, but the name on the screen made my heart stop. Danny Mobile. I dropped the phone. It clattered against the hardwood floor, but the ringing continued, that familiar ringtone I'd assigned to him all those years ago, a few bars of his favorite song, Hotel California. I'd never deleted his contact. I couldn't. Sometimes, late at night, I would scroll through our old text messages just to see his words again. Love you, Mom. Be home by 10. Can you make your famous lasagna this weekend? You're the best mom ever. The phone kept ringing. My hands trembled as I picked it up. This wasn't possible. His phone had been destroyed in the accident. I'd buried that phone with him, tucked into the pocket of his favorite jacket. I remembered placing it there myself, my tears soaking into the fabric as I whispered my final goodbye. My finger hovered over the answer button. Don't answer it. Something inside me screamed, this is wrong. This is so wrong. But what if somehow... I pressed answer. Silence. No, not silence. Breathing. Soft, rhythmic breathing. Hello? My voice cracked. I hadn't spoken out loud in 3 days, since therapy on Monday, where I told Dr. Rees that I was doing better. A lie. Always a lie. The breathing continued. Danny? I whispered, the name I hadn't spoken aloud in years. It hurt too much to say. It felt like swallowing broken glass. And then, a voice. Mom. I collapsed. My back hit the wall as my legs gave out. The phone stayed pressed to my ear, my fingers cramped around it like claws. Danny, I sobbed. Danny, is that you? Baby, is that you? Mom, I need you to listen to me. It was his voice. God help me, it was his voice. The same voice that used to call from upstairs, asking what was for dinner. The same voice that sang along badly to songs in the car. The same voice that told me he loved me every single night before bed. Where are you? I was hyperventilating. Danny, where are you? Are you alive? Please tell me you're alive. Please. Mom, stop. The sharpness in his tone made me freeze. That wasn't like him. Danny was gentle, kind, always patient with me even when I didn't deserve it. I'm not alive, Mom. The words hung in the air like ice. I died 15 years ago. You know that. Then how are you calling me? That doesn't matter. What matters is what I'm about to tell you. You need to find something. In my room, there's a loose floorboard under my bed. I hid something there. You need to find it. My mind was spinning. His room. I hadn't changed a thing. Not a poster, not a shirt, not a single book. It was exactly as he left, frozen in time. What is it? What did you hide? The truth. Static crackled through the line. Mom, they lied to you. The accident. It wasn't an accident. What? Danny, what are you saying? Find it. Find the truth. Don't trust. The call ended. "Danny! Danny, no! Come back!" I screamed at the phone, pressed redial over and over, but the line was dead, just an empty void where my son's voice had been. I sat there on the floor, shaking, crying, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Was I hallucinating? Had I finally lost my mind completely? Dr. Reeves had warned me that grief could do strange things to the brain, especially around anniversaries. But the call log was there, clear as day. Danny Mobile, 3:07 a.m., 3 minutes, 27 seconds. It was real. I ran to his room. I hadn't run in years. My 53-year-old knees screamed in protest as I took the stairs 2 at a time, but I didn't care. I didn't care about anything except getting to that room. The door creaked open. The familiar smell hit me. Faded now. So faded, but still there. The ghost of his cologne. The smell of the books he loved. The memory of life. His bed was perfectly made. I'd made it the morning after his funeral and never touched it again. His posters still covered the walls, bands he loved, movies he watched 100 times, a poster of the solar system because he dreamed of being an astronaut when he was little. I dropped to my knees beside the bed and pushed it aside with strength I didn't know I had. The carpet beneath was dusty, undisturbed for years. I felt along the floorboards. Solid. Solid, solid, then loose. My fingernails scraped against the wood as I pried it up, and there, in the dark space beneath, was a metal box. My hands shook so violently I could barely hold it. I lifted it out and sat on the edge of his bed, something I hadn't done since before he died. The mattress sank beneath my weight, releasing a puff of dust and memory. The box had a simple latch, no lock. I opened it. Inside were things I'd never seen before, things that made no sense. First, a stack of photographs. My son with a girl I didn't recognize. Beautiful, with long, dark hair and frightened eyes. They weren't smiling in any of the pictures. They looked scared. They looked like they were hiding. Second, a small notebook filled with Danny's handwriting. I recognized it immediately. The slightly crooked letters, the way he always forgot to cross his T's. And third, a USB drive. I grabbed the notebook first and began to read. March 15th. Something's wrong. She's scared to go home, and I can't blame her. I saw the bruises today. She tried to cover them, but I saw. I asked her about it, and she cried. She made me promise not to tell anyone. But how can I stay quiet about this? March 22nd. I followed her home today. I needed to know. I needed to see. He came outside, her stepfather, and he was drunk. Even from across the street, I could smell the alcohol. He grabbed her by the hair and dragged her inside. I wanted to call the police. She begged me not to. She said it would make things worse. She said he would kill her. "He'll kill me, Danny. If anyone finds out, he'll kill me." I believe her. April 3rd. I have a plan. I'm going to record everything. I'm going to get proof. Then I'll take it to the police, and they'll have to do something. They'll have to arrest him. She doesn't know what I'm doing. If she knew, she'd try to stop me. But I can't let this continue. I love her. I can't let him hurt her anymore. I stopped reading. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my skull. Danny had a girlfriend? He'd never told me. Why hadn't he told me? I kept reading. April 17th. I got the proof. Video, audio, everything. It's all on the USB drive. It's sickening. What he does to her, what he says. I almost threw up watching it. But now I have it. Now I can end this. Tomorrow, I'm going to the police station. That was the last entry. The next day was April 18th, the day Danny died.
The official story was simple. Danny was driving late at night. He took a curve too fast. His car went off the road, hit a tree, exploded on impact. They identified him by dental records. Closed casket. Funeral. I never saw my son's body. At the time, I was too devastated to question anything. I trusted the police. I trusted the coroner's report. Why would I doubt them?
But now, sitting in my dead son's room with his secret journal in my hands, doubt consumed me. Find the truth. Don't trust. Don't trust who? The USB drive felt heavy in my palm. I needed to see what was on it. I needed to understand. I went to my bedroom and grabbed my laptop. My hands trembled as I plugged in the drive. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then a folder appeared. Evidence. Inside were video files, audio recordings, documents. I clicked on the first video. The image was dark, grainy, clearly filmed through a window at night, but I could see a living room. A man, large, balding, wearing a stained tank top, was standing over a small figure huddled in the corner. A girl. The same girl from the photographs. "Please," she whimpered. "Please, I'm sorry." The man's fist connected with her face. I slammed the laptop shut, unable to watch more. Who was this man? Who was this girl? And what did any of this have to do with my son's death? I forced myself to reopen the laptop. I needed answers. I scrolled through the files until I found a document titled Notes. Danny had done research. The girl's name was Elena Vasquez. Her mother had died when she was 12. Her stepfather, Marcus Webb, had been her legal guardian ever since. Marcus Webb. I knew that name. My blood ran cold as the memory surfaced. Marcus Webb was a police officer. 15 years ago, he was a sergeant with the county sheriff's department. And he was one of the officers who came to my door that night to tell me my son was dead. I spent the rest of that night in a state of frenzied research. Old newspaper articles, social media profiles, public records, anything I could find. Marcus Webb had retired from the police force 5 years after Danny's death. Full pension, commendations, respected member of the community. He now lived in a nice house in the suburbs, just 30 minutes from here. Elena Vasquez, the girl Danny had loved, had disappeared. There were no records of her after 2008, the year Danny died. No social media, no address, no employment records. She had simply vanished. As the sun rose over the oak tree in my backyard, I made a decision. I was going to find the truth, no matter what it cost me. My first call was to Roger Brennan, a private investigator I'd met years ago at a grief support group. His daughter had been killed by a drunk driver, and, like me, he'd never fully recovered. We'd kept in touch over the years, and I knew he still had connections. "Margaret?" His voice was groggy. It was only 6 a.m. "Is everything okay?" "No," I said. "I need your help, and you're going to think I'm crazy when I tell you why." I told him everything. The phone call, the journal, the USB drive, Marcus Webb. When I finished, there was a long silence. "You're sure it was his voice?" "Roger, I would know my son's voice anywhere. It was him. I don't know how, I don't know why, but it was him." "And you think Webb had something to do with his death?" "Danny had evidence of him abusing his stepdaughter. He was going to the police the next day, and suddenly, conveniently, he dies in a car accident? And Webb is one of the officers who investigates?" Another silence. "This is dangerous, Margaret. If you're right, if a cop covered up a murder, then I need to prove it." Roger sighed heavily. "Meet me at the diner on 5th Street. 3 hours. Don't tell anyone else about this. And Margaret." "Yes?" "Bring the USB drive and make a copy first." Roger looked older than I remembered. His hair had gone completely gray, and deep lines creased his forehead. But his eyes were still sharp, still burning with the same fire that had driven him to solve his daughter's case years ago. We sat in a corner booth, speaking in low voices. "I did some digging this morning," he said, sliding a folder across the table. "Marcus Webb's personnel file. I still have a friend in records who owes me." I opened it with shaking hands. 3 complaints of excessive force over his career, all dismissed. 2 domestic disturbance calls to his home, both mysteriously dropped before any charges were filed. And look at this. He pointed to a specific entry. "The night your son died, Webb was the first officer on the scene. He was off duty, wasn't even supposed to be working, yet somehow he just happened to be driving by when your son's car went off that cliff." "He was there," I whispered. "He was there when it happened." "Or he made it happen." The words hung in the air like poison. "There's more," Roger said. "Elena Vasquez, I found her." My head snapped up. "Where?" "She changed her name after your son died, moved across the country, Portland, Oregon. She's a social worker now, works with abused children." He slid a piece of paper with an address across the table. "She's alive, Margaret, and if anyone knows what really happened that night, it's her." I left that afternoon. Roger wanted to come with me, but I refused. This was something I had to do alone. Danny had been my son. This was my responsibility. The flight was 4 hours long. I spent every minute staring at the clouds outside my window, clutching the USB drive in my pocket like a talisman. What would I even say to Elena? How do you approach someone after 15 years and ask them about the worst night of their life? "Hi, you probably don't remember me, but my son loved you, and I think you might know who killed him." God, this was insane. But every time I doubted myself, I remembered Danny's voice on that phone call, the fear in his words, the urgency. "They lied to you. It wasn't an accident." I landed in Portland at 7 p.m. local time. By 8, I was standing outside a modest apartment building in a quiet neighborhood, watching the lights in a third-floor window. Elena Vasquez, now Elena Torres, was home. I stood there for 20 minutes trying to work up the courage to go inside. What if she didn't want to talk? What if she slammed the door in my face? What if... My phone buzzed. A text message from Danny's number. "Tell her I never stopped loving her." I stared at the screen, tears streaming down my face. Then I walked into the building. She answered on the 3rd knock. The years had changed her, but I still recognized those eyes, dark and deep and haunted. She was 32 now, a grown woman, but there was still something of that frightened girl in her expression. "Can I help you?" "Elena," I said softly. "My name is Margaret Chen. I'm..." Her face went white. "Danny's mother." She stood frozen for a long moment. Then, slowly, she stepped back and opened the door wider. "I've been waiting for you," she whispered. "For 15 years I've been waiting." Her apartment was small but warm. Plants filled every corner. Books lined every shelf. A cat curled up on the couch watched us with suspicious eyes. Elena made tea. Her hand shook as she poured. "I saw the news coverage after he died," she said, not meeting my eyes. "I saw you at the funeral, even though I didn't dare approach. I wanted to tell you the truth so many times, but I was scared. God, I was so scared." "Scared of Marcus Webb?" She flinched at the name. "Tell me what happened that night, please. I need to know." She was silent for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "Danny found out what Marcus was doing to me. He wanted to help. He was so brave, the bravest person I ever knew. He gathered evidence, videos, audio recordings. He was going to expose everything." "I found the USB drive." She nodded slowly. "I didn't know he'd hidden one. I knew he was recording things, but I thought Marcus destroyed everything when he..." She stopped, swallowed hard. "When he... what?" "When he killed him." The words hit me like a physical blow.
I'd suspected, I'd known on some level, but hearing it confirmed. How? I forced the word out. Danny called me that night, April 17th. He was excited, said he had everything he needed, that he was going to the police first thing in the morning. But I was scared. Marcus had connections everywhere. I told Danny to wait, to be careful, but he wouldn't listen. She wiped tears from her eyes. Marcus must have been monitoring my phone. He knew. That night, Danny was driving home from my apartment. Marcus followed him. He ran Danny's car off the road. "The cliff," I whispered. It wasn't a normal accident. Marcus had help, another officer, his partner at the time. They made it look like Danny lost control, but they were the ones who pushed him off. Then they made sure nobody questioned it. Closed casket, quick investigation, case closed. His partner, I said. Who was it? Elena met my eyes for the first time. Chief Detective Howard Price. My stomach dropped. Howard Price was now the chief of police for the entire county. The next 48 hours were a blur of investigation and revelation. Roger flew out to Portland to help. Together, the three of us, me, him, and Elena, pieced together the full picture of what had happened 15 years ago. Roger Webb hadn't just been an abuser. He was part of a ring of corrupt officers who protected each other's crimes. Drug trafficking, evidence tampering, intimidation of witnesses, and when necessary, murder. Danny had stumbled into something much bigger than just Elena's abuse. The USB drive contained more than just evidence against Webb. It contained financial records, names, and dates that connected half a dozen officers to criminal enterprises throughout the county. He didn't know what he had, Elena explained. He was just trying to save me. He didn't realize he'd also uncovered a massive conspiracy. But they realized it, Roger said grimly. They realized a 17-year-old kid had enough evidence to bring down the entire operation, so they eliminated him. And covered their tracks, I added, for 15 years. We knew the truth now, but knowing wasn't enough. These men were powerful, connected, dangerous. If we went public without airtight evidence, they would destroy us. Or worse. We need to copy everything, Roger said. Send it to multiple journalists, lawyers, federal authorities. If something happens to us, the truth still gets out. We spent 2 days making copies, sending encrypted files, reaching out to contacts Roger had cultivated over years of investigative work. We documented everything, the original USB drive, Elena's testimony, the inconsistencies in the accident report. And then my phone rang again. 3 a.m. Danny's number. I answered immediately this time. Mom! I'm here, baby. I'm here. You found her. You found Elena. Yes, and I found the truth. I know what they did to you. There was silence on the line. When Danny spoke again, his voice was thick with emotion I'd never heard before. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry I didn't tell you everything. I was trying to protect you. I thought if you didn't know, they couldn't hurt you, too. You were protecting me? I laughed through my tears. You were 17 years old. I should have been protecting you. You did. Every day. You gave me the courage to try to help Elena in the first place. You taught me that doing the right thing matters, even when it's hard, even when it's dangerous. Danny. I don't have much time, Mom. I can't keep calling like this. Explain, but this is the last time. No, please. Listen to me. Tomorrow, you're going to end this. You're going to make them pay for what they did. But you need to be careful. Webb knows you're looking. He's coming for you. How do you know that? Just trust me. When the time comes, remember what I always told you about fear." I closed my eyes, remembering. Danny used to have terrible nightmares as a child. I would sit beside his bed and he would ask me, "Mommy, how do I stop being scared?" And I would say, "Fear is just your mind trying to protect you," I whispered, "but you're stronger than your fear." "That's right. You're stronger than your fear, Mom. You've always been strong. So be strong tomorrow for me, for Elena, for all the people they've hurt." "I will. I promise. I love you, Mom. I've always loved you. Even death couldn't change that. I love you too, baby. So much, so much. One more thing. The oak tree in the backyard. Look at the base. I left something there the night before I died. I never got to give it to you. What is it? You'll see. Goodbye, Mom." The line went dead. This time, I knew he wouldn't call again. I flew home that night. I pulled into my driveway at sunrise and went straight to the backyard, still in my travel clothes, still exhausted from the journey. The oak tree stood where it had always stood, ancient, patient, its branches reaching toward the sky like arms lifted in prayer. Danny's tire swing still hung from the lowest branch, swaying gently in the morning breeze. I knelt at the base and began to dig. The soil was soft from recent rain. My fingers quickly found something solid, a small tin box wrapped in a plastic bag to protect it from the elements. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a card, handmade, with Danny's characteristic crooked letters. "Happy Mother's Day, Mom." Below the words was a drawing of the two of us holding hands, stick figures with big smiles. And inside the card, a message. "Mom, I know I don't say it enough, but you're my hero. You've sacrificed so much for me, and I've never properly thanked you. So here it is. Thank you. Thank you for the late nights helping with homework. Thank you for the early mornings making breakfast. Thank you for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. I have something important I need to do this week. I can't tell you about it yet, but when it's done, I promise I'll explain everything. Just know that whatever happens, I'm doing it because you taught me to stand up for what's right. I love you more than words can say. Your son, Danny. P.S. When I'm a famous astronaut, I'm going to name a star after you." I clutched the card to my chest and wept. He'd written this the night before he died. He'd buried it here, planning to give it to me on Mother's Day. But Mother's Day never came for him. He never got the chance. 15 years. This letter had been waiting for me for 15 years. And now, finally, I had found it. The story broke the following morning. Roger had coordinated with investigative journalists at 3 major newspapers. The headline was everywhere. "Corrupt police ring exposed, 15-year cover-up unraveled." Marcus Webb was arrested at his home at 7 a.m. I watched the footage on the news, him being led out in handcuffs, his face twisted in fury. Chief Howard tried to flee the country. He was apprehended at the airport, caught with a suitcase full of cash and a one-way ticket to a non-extradition country. Elena gave testimony to federal investigators. Her story, combined with the USB drive evidence and the inconsistencies we'd uncovered, painted a damning picture. But I needed more than justice delivered through lawyers and courtrooms. I needed to look Marcus Webb in the eye. I showed up at the county jail 3 days later and requested a visitor meeting. I don't know why they approved it. Maybe the guards felt sorry for me, the grieving mother who'd finally learned the truth about her son's murder. Webb was brought into the visiting room in shackles. He looked smaller than I remembered, older. The arrogance that had defined him for decades was gone, replaced with something empty and bitter. He sat across from me, a sheet of glass between us. "Mrs. Chen, come to gloat?" "I came to tell you something." "What's that?" I leaned forward. My son was 17 years old. He was brave and kind and good. He loved a girl you were destroying, and he tried to save her. You took him from me. You took his entire future, his dreams, his potential, his life. And for 15 years, you let me believe it was an accident. You let me blame myself, wondering if I could have done something differently. You let me drown in guilt and grief while you lived your comfortable life.
Webb said nothing. But here's what you didn't count on, I continued. Love doesn't die. It doesn't matter that Danny's been gone for 15 years. His love was strong enough to reach across whatever barrier separates the living from the dead. His love helped me find the truth. His love brought you down. Webb's jaw tightened. You're crazy. The dead don't make phone calls. Maybe not, I said, but I got those calls. I heard his voice, and he told me exactly where to find the evidence that destroyed you. Explain that. He couldn't. I stood up to leave. One more thing, I said. Danny wanted me to tell you something. He said, some things are stronger than death. Love is one of them, and so is justice. I walked out and never looked back. The trial lasted 8 months. Marcus Webb was convicted of second-degree murder, obstruction of justice, and a dozen other charges. He received life in prison without the possibility of parole. Howard Price was convicted of conspiracy and accessory to murder, 25 years. 4 other officers went down with them, their decades of corruption finally exposed. Elena testified at every trial. She was stronger than I'd ever imagined, a survivor in the truest sense of the word. When it was over, she came to stay with me for a week. We sat together on the back porch watching the sun set behind the oak tree. He talked about you all the time, you know, Danny. He said you were the best mother in the world. He said he wanted to grow up to be as brave as you. I smiled through my tears. He was already braver than me. He proved that. What will you do now? I thought about it. I'm going to live, I said, really live, for the first time in 15 years. Danny wouldn't want me to spend the rest of my life mourning him. He'd want me to be happy. He'd want me to find joy again. Elena nodded. That sounds right. What about you? She looked at the tire swing swaying gently in the breeze. I'm going to keep doing what I've been doing, helping kids who are in the same situation I was, making sure they don't end up like me or like Danny. That's beautiful. It's the only way I know how to honor him. We sat in comfortable silence until the stars came out, and there, in the darkness, I could have sworn I saw one star burning brighter than all the others. I smiled. Good night, Danny, I whispered. I love you. The star seemed to twinkle in response. 1 year later, on the anniversary of Danny's death, I received a letter. It arrived in an envelope with no return address. The handwriting was Danny's. I would recognize it anywhere. My hands shook as I opened it. Mom, if you're reading this, it means the truth finally came out. I knew it would eventually. I knew you'd never stop looking for answers. That's just who you are. I want you to know that I'm okay. I can't explain where I am or how I'm contacting you. Honestly, I'm not sure I understand it myself, but I want you to know that death isn't the end. It's just different. I watch you sometimes. I saw you plant those flowers by my grave. I saw you finally take my tire swing down. Thank you for waiting so long. I know that was hard. I saw you start painting again, the way you used to when I was little. It made me so happy to see you creating beautiful things again. You did it, Mom. You found the truth. You got justice for me. But more than that, you saved Elena. You gave her the closure she needed to fully heal. And you brought down people who would have hurt many more innocents if they'd been allowed to continue. I'm proud of you. I always was, but now more than ever. I don't know if I'll ever be able to contact you again. The rules here are complicated, but I want you to know that no matter what, I'm always with you. Every time you feel a warm breeze on your face, that's me saying hello. Every time you see a particularly beautiful sunset, that's me reminding you that beauty still exists. And every time you feel like giving up, remember that I'm watching and I'm cheering you on. Live your life, Mom. Fall in love again if you can. You deserve happiness. Travel to all those places you always talked about. Eat too much ice cream. Laugh until your sides hurt. Do all the things you put on hold when you were too busy mourning me. I'll be waiting. When it's your time, and not a second before, I'll be there to greet you. We'll have so much to talk about, so much to catch up on, and we'll have forever to do it. Until then, live. Really, truly live. I love you, Mom, always and forever. Your son, Danny. P.S. I did it. I named a star after you. It's the bright one just to the left of Orion's belt. The official name is Margaret 1. Catchy, right? I laughed, I cried, I clutched the letter to my heart, and then I did exactly what he asked. I lived.